My wife, Kelly, and her brother, Mark, always had a strained relationship. In fact, it was something I'd noticed from the very first time I met her. Kelly, being the oldest, often talked about how Mark, the youngest, was the spoiled one, the family's baby. It seemed like such a simple explanation for the tension between them. But, something about it just didn't sit right with me. I remember asking her parents once, just out of curiosity, what exactly caused this animosity. They didn't give me a clear answer, just that it had been that way for as long as they could remember. But as I got to know Kelly better, I began to realize there was much more to their complicated dynamic than a mere sibling rivalry. And then came that wedding. The wedding that should have been perfect. It was a couple of months after Kelly and I started dating when we went to a family wedding. It was the first time I would spend extended time with her family, and I remember feeling both excited and a little apprehensive. Kelly's parents, Sarah and Lucas, had treated me like I was already part of the family from day one. They were warm, welcoming, and treated me better than the parents of my previous girlfriends. In contrast, the fathers of my ex-girlfriends had always looked at me with suspicion, and it had put a strain on those relationships. But with Kelly's family, I felt like I was accepted right away. At the wedding, Kelly was one of the bridesmaids, and Mark was a groomsman. I didn't think much of it, not yet aware of the deep-rooted conflict between them. Everything was going well. The bride was stunning, the groom looked like he belonged in a tuxedo ad, and for the most part, I was enjoying myself. But then, during the reception, everything went sideways. The moment everything fell apart. I was dancing with Kelly's mom, Sarah, as the Sinatra song played in the background. It was the kind of moment that made you feel like time had slowed down. I hadn't had much time to talk to Kelly, with everyone pulling her in different directions. I had just noticed her and Mark off in a corner, their faces twisted in anger. I couldn't hear them, but the tension was palpable. I didn't want to get involved, but when Kelly's worried look met mine, I excused myself and went over to them. "Hey, babe," I said, trying to break up the tension, "I'd really love to get you on the dance floor." Mark turned to me, his expression shifting for just a second before he spoke. "Todd, you're too good for my sister," he said, and then walked away with this strange, almost amused smile on his face. Kelly pulled me away without saying a word, and I could feel the weight of whatever had just passed between them hanging in the air. We didn't talk about it that night, but I knew then that there was something much deeper between Kelly and Mark. A tension that went beyond simple sibling rivalry. A few years later, married life and a new house. Fast forward a few years, and Kelly and I were married. We had settled into what could have been the perfect life, a cozy home, a strong marriage, and plenty of plans for the future. Kelly's parents had even sold us her grandparents' house at a significantly reduced price. We were doing well financially and enjoying our lives, traveling when we could. Kids were definitely in the picture eventually, but we wanted to savor our time together first. But like all things in life, the calm wouldn't last forever. The Thanksgiving that exposed everything. It was Thanksgiving at Kelly's parents' house, and the place was packed with relatives. It had all the trappings of a traditional family gathering, big dinner, too much food, and a bunch of people trying their best to avoid awkward conversations. Kelly and I sat next to each other, but as fate would have it, Mark and his new girlfriend, Miranda, ended up sitting across from us. The dinner started off just like any other. People were chatting, passing around dishes, and cracking jokes. Mark, who had been on his best behavior for the past few years, seemed to be getting along with everyone, even Kelly. But that didn't last long. As Kelly passed the mashed potatoes to me, she turned to Miranda, her tone sharp. "It's so nice to finally meet you. I've heard such great things about you from my mom and aunts. Maybe you're the one who can straighten out Mark and make him an honest man." My gut clenched. The comment seemed innocent enough, but I could feel the storm brewing. And then came the bombshell. Miranda, smiling and clearly smitten with Mark, revealed that they were engaged. The room erupted in cheers. Sarah and Lucas were beaming, proud of their son. But Kelly looked like someone had just slapped her across the face. "Tell me, Miranda," Kelly said, her voice dripping with sarcasm, "has my brother told you about his past? He has quite the track record with women. In fact, a few years ago, he got one girl pregnant and convinced her to get an abortion." The room went silent. I could feel the tension radiating off everyone. It was clear that Kelly had crossed a line, but Mark wasn't about to back down. "Yes, dear sister," Mark replied, his tone dripping with mock sweetness, "I've told Miranda everything about my past. Every last detail." It was then that he turned the tables. The dark secret Kelly had hidden. Mark looked at Kelly with a wicked grin. "But I have to ask you, Kelly, have you told Todd about your own history with men?" The room fell silent again, and I could feel the eyes of everyone around us. It was like the world had stopped spinning, and all that mattered now was Kelly's past. "What are you talking about?" I said, trying to play it cool. But deep down, I knew that something terrible was about to come to light. Mark leaned back in his chair, savoring the moment. "Kelly's been with over 100 guys, Todd. And she's never told you that, has she?" My heart sank. The words felt like they were being punched into my chest. But before I could say anything, Mark continued, his voice sharp as a knife. She was kicked out of college after getting caught in a huge scandal. She was sleeping with a whole house full of frat boys. And she got an STD that they had to track down all the guys she had been with. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't process what I was hearing. My mind raced, but all I could focus on was Kelly's face. She was pale, her hands shaking as she stared down at the table. The air around me felt thick, suffocating. I looked at my wife, trying to understand how she could have kept something like this from me. I thought I knew her, truly knew her. But in that moment, I realized I didn't know her at all. I know you're angry, Mark said, his grin widening, but you deserve to know the truth. Kelly's no angel, Todd. She's never been. The revelation that shattered us. The room went completely still. Everyone had stopped eating, stopped talking. I couldn't even look at Kelly anymore. I just stared at her, my mind racing with a million thoughts. I wanted to scream. I wanted to throw Mark across the table and punch him in the face. But then I looked at Kelly again. And for the first time, I saw the truth in her eyes, shame. She wasn't defending herself. She wasn't denying it. She was ashamed. And that was the hardest part to swallow. Yes, she whispered, looking away from me. It's true. The words hit me like a freight train. And in that moment, I knew nothing would ever be the same again. The aftermath. I didn't say another word. I couldn't. I stood up, walked out the door, and left everything behind. My mind was a blur, my body numb. I didn't know what to think, what to feel. I ended up at my uncle's guest house, a small place I could retreat to when I needed space. Kelly tried to contact me, texts, calls, voicemails. She pleaded, begged me to understand. But all I could hear in her voice was desperation, and that only made everything worse. I eventually agreed to talk to her. She begged me to forgive her, promised that she had changed. But I couldn't shake the image of her with those other men. I couldn't erase the thought of the many secrets she had hidden from me. And then Mark's words came back to me. The way he had smiled when he talked about the cousin's wedding. He knew something I didn't. He had been hiding something for years. And so had Kelly. I told her that I wasn't ready to make any decisions. I promised to go to marriage counseling, but in my heart, I knew things would never be the same. I still love her. But I don't know if I can ever look at her the same way again. I don't know if I can ever forget the past she tried so hard to bury. Maybe counseling will help. Maybe I'll be able to forgive her. Or maybe, just maybe, I'll never be.